All right, biracial politics in America, part 3, Age of Enlightenment. You know, my parents had a modest education. As a matter of fact, neither one of them finished high school, but they were two of the smartest people I've ever met because they were eat up with common sense. And I loved that about them. And I love the fact that they instilled an approach to life based on just listen to things and let your common sense react. In other words, don't be overwhelmed by data. Don't let the quote unquote experts, guide you in a certain direction. And I remember I was engaged before my current wife of 26 years. I had an engagement before that did not work out very well. And my parents knew that it wasn't going to work out. When we were visiting my parents' home, my parents said we communicated with them, but we didn't communicate with each other. And I would say communication was our biggest issue, and it caused a lot of problems. And my mom just, wisely told me, said, son, if you can't get along during the good times, what are you going to do when you have challenges? And of course, when we had enough challenges, it ended the engagement. And let's face it, folks, as far as it comes to President Trump having another term, we've seen this movie before, right? When he ran the first time, we didn't know what type of president he would be. He was a candidate. And everybody said, oh, when he becomes president, he'll act presidential. How did that work out? And he did have good times. He talked about his economy, and President Obama on the campaign trail said, yeah, you had a great economy. I gave it to him. And what did he do with that good economy? His only major legislation that I can remember was the big tax cuts, which went primarily for the wealthy. And he ran up the national debt for a one-term president more than any other president in history. That was his financial legacy. When people go, oh, he's a great businessman. Really? The guy that got a $500 million head start from his dad and still filed bankruptcy a half dozen times, that's the great business guy that you guys want to reelect, you guys being anybody that's dumb enough to vote for this knucklehead again. And that was during the good times. When the bad times hit, like the pandemic, it was a bad time to have a bad president. And, oh, well, Robert, the pandemic could have happened to anyone. Well, possible pandemics did occur. We had Ebola and we had other diseases that were of concern. And the Obama administration actually had a playbook on how to deal with pandemics. And that playbook was handed to the Trump administration, which they obviously did not use. And over 1,200,000 Americans died from the COVID pandemic. And that lets you know right there that it was mismanaged. I mean, I don't have to give any more stat than that because each one of those lives were important. And each one of those lives could have had a shot of being saved if we had gotten those vaccines into all the arms. And I tell you, I did appreciate the fact that he had that Trump did have a program called Warp Speed, and I'd never seen a vaccine rolled out that quickly. So, if I were to give the Trump administration any kudos, it would be on that Warp Speed and getting the vaccine rolled out quickly. And then turning around and telling people not to take it. Oh my goodness, you just can't make it up. But remember during his campaign, Trump said, I'm going to hire the best people. The people are going to be my theme throughout this entire podcast. Because ABC News in 2020 reported that 14 Trump aides, donors, and advisors were indicted or imprisoned since he made that campaign promise. I'm not including the 34 felonies that he was convicted of. And although all the polls show a close election, there are three major reasons I think the polls are wrong. First of all, the candidate. Donald Trump is an unbelievably flawed person. And I can say that because I'm an American taxpayer. And I'm a voter. If I don't like somebody, I have the freedom to say I don't like them. I have a feeling if Trump is reelected, I may not have that freedom in the future. And he has shown himself to be unqualified. And as VP Harris says, an unserious man. And he has increasingly shown us that he's not up to the task. And as the great saying goes, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. The second reason I think the polls are off, the policies of the two candidates. Donald Trump doesn't have any policies. As you remember from the debate, he has concepts of policies and procedures. Vice President Harris actually has policies. You can go to her campaign website and actually download her policies on major issues that are being covered during this campaign. And primarily, which is my third reason I think the polls are off, are the people. You know, Donald Trump has talked about campaign sizes or rally sizes as long as this campaign's been going on. And let's look recently at the rally sizes of Vice President Harris's campaign rallies. They've been unbelievable. And the people are excited. They're dancing. They're happy. They're diverse. You look at a Trump rally, you can pretty much sketch who's going to be there. First of all, it's going to be primarily white, if not all white. And I love the interviews of the Trump supporters because you can pretty much give about 2 or 3 different types of people, you know, older, young, white, you know, usually poorly educated because they do a very bad job of answering the questions. But the Trump supporter is pretty much a known commodity. And I don't think it's a major part of this country. So I think the polls are off. But let's talk about people. I think the Democrats truly already have the best people. And I'm going to start with the most important person, the current president of the United States, President Joe Biden. I think the legacy of President Joe Biden is going to go down as one of the best in my lifetime. And I'm 63 years old because he's accomplished major legislation, you know, and he's done it in a bipartisan manner when he could. And I mean, infrastructure bill, CHIPS Act. I mean, you know, he has several things he can hang his legislative hat on. But the main thing is he gave up power. He fought it. He may have waited till the 9th inning with 1 out, but he tapped Vice President Harris to lead the Democratic Party into this current election. And it has saved this country because I think it's going to turn out well for the Democratic Party. Before that, I think the Democrats stood a big chance of losing not only the presidency, but the House and the Senate. Now, all three are going to be a fight. I don't believe that voters have the option of not showing up because we, the people, have to be the answer. But I think that President Biden is the reason that Democrats are surging. And the reason is because he picked Vice President Harris, and it has just been an outstanding choice. I think she has run a flawless campaign. And let's look at some of the people that have jumped on board. President Obama and his wife, Michelle. And if you haven't heard the speech Michelle Obama recently gave, and it really covered the loss of women's rights and why men should care. If you haven't heard that speech, you need to go back and watch it. Find it on YouTube, find it on social media, but you need to watch her speech. Let's talk about Liz Cheney and dozens of other prominent Republicans who have turned their support to Vice President Harris and Tim Walz's ticket. Not only is Liz Cheney offering her support, she is actively campaigning with Vice President Harris. And I think for a Cheney, someone like her father who also supports Vice President Harris's campaign, were lifelong Republicans. I mean, they were the stereotypical Republican. When you thought of Republicans, you thought of Dick Cheney, you thought of Liz Cheney, in the same breath that you think of someone like a Ronald Reagan. So the fact that she is actively campaigning is just remarkable. And so many other Trump appointees and offices, including his chief of staff, John Kelly, recently coming out that he believes Donald Trump is a fascist. And it's taken a long time. It took a long time for the American people to call him a liar. He needs to be fact checked. And the Republicans would dance circles around what he said and said, no, he wasn't saying that. He was saying this. He didn't mean it this way. He was joking, or he didn't mean that. He meant this. Finally, they just said, you know what? He's lying. Over 30,000 provable lies, during his presidency. And now so many former Republicans, including his own cabinet. I mean, his former vice president, is not backing him. Remember, hang Mike Pence? Well, when you try to hang somebody, they probably don't want to run with you if you're going to run again. So even Mike Pence is not supporting his former boss. And there are dozens of others. I love there's a current picture on the internet that has all of his, cabinet, and has the face blacked out if they're not supporting it. And there aren't any faces that aren't blacked out. I mean, it's pretty incredible. And you can get away from politics. Let's go to just the stars. I mean, if I ever meet Taylor Swift and I'm allowed to give her a hug, I'm going to give her a hug simply because of what she has done to help the Harris-Walz campaign. She has, just through her post about registering to vote, has set all sorts of registration records. She's gotten young people, excited about politics. And I don't understand the whole Taylor Swift phenomenon. I love her and Travis Kelce as a couple. I am praying for them to make it. I think they're exciting and just lovable. But I think she is a force of nature. Her concerts are a force of nature financially, and wherever she performs, she treats her people well. I feel through what I know about her that she is an incredible person. And I am so thankful that she has backed the Democratic campaign in this election, because I think it's going to make a difference. And you look at other people like Oprah. I remember when Oprah was like the star on the planet. Very few people you can go anywhere in the world and say their name in one word. And, Pele was that when I was growing up. He was a famous soccer player. And Ali was that when I was growing up. He was a famous boxing heavyweight champion. Very few people can go. Oprah is one of those people. You just say Oprah. And of course, Tyler Perry and Beyonce and Bruce Springsteen and so many others. I mean, I could just go on and on. But again, the people, the best people, not only the best Democrats, but some of the best Republicans, not only stars, but some of the best stars. And as Vice President Harris would say, and she says on the campaign trail, we need to turn the page on Donald Trump. But let's look at why Trump is going to lose the election. Because it's not just what the Democrats are doing, it's what Trump is not doing. He's done nothing to increase his voter base. And by the way, he lost the last election. I know he won't admit it. Well, he has admitted it, sort of. But he did not have enough votes and enough electoral college ballots to win the last election. But he has done a lot to decrease his voting base. And the things he's done is staggering. I mean, first of all, I don't believe the polls when they say they're close. Second of all, I'll show you several reasons why I think, his numbers have been cut by his own actions and by the actions of his campaign. Because it's staggering. First and foremost, the Dobbs decision overturning Roe v. Wade. This is not only earth-shattering, it's dangerous. The reason it's dangerous to me, I'm in a biracial marriage. I'm a biracial person in a biracial marriage. A marriage that was illegal within my lifetime. And I think if the Dobbs decision is allowed to stay, they're going to take a lot of decisions. And they're just going to go, I don't care how far the precedent goes back. We want to overturn this right. We want to overturn that right. We want to make sure that this is no longer a thing. So they can say, you know what? We don't want gay marriage to be a thing anymore. We don't want biracial marriage to be a thing anymore, just like we don't want women's rights to be a thing anymore. That's why it's dangerous, in my opinion. So first and foremost, we need to get Roe v. Wade back as the law of the land and get women's rights back, because let me tell you, folks, when they finish with women's rights, gay and lesbian rights, biracial rights, immigration, you want to talk about the deportation promises that Trump has made, and using the U.S. military to handle a lot of the things that he's promising. That's scary. That's absolutely terrifying. It's terrifying because if he gets back in office, he can implement all those things in Project 2025. And there will be no guardrails to stop him. I can see how a Stalin, how a Hitler comes to power. And I think left to their own devices, a second Trump administration will be as evil in its intentions as any on the history of the planet. I mean, mass deportations, taking away rights, eliminating the bias. You know, the court's not supposed to have a political bias, but it does. The Supreme Court has a political bias, and it's only going to get worse. You think it's bad where the court is now? Let Trump get 2 or 3 more. I mean, it'll just be whatever he wants to do. He can not only do it, but whatever wacky legislation he wants to pass, they'll back his play. But let's talk about when he had a town hall recently, and he just decided, you know what, for almost 40 minutes, I'm going to play some music. Ave Maria, YMCA. I mean, wackadoodle. Think about if Joe Biden was still running and he had done something like that. It would be over, Rover. You could just call the election because it would, the Democrats would be done. And I just can't believe that the American people are gonna put this guy back in office. I refuse to believe that. Also, he used about 20 buses to bus his people at a rally in Coachella and just bust them out in the middle of the desert. And then after the rally, just left them. I think they had one functioning bus that was bringing rally goers back. And there were some they're in the middle of the desert. And from what, some of the things that I read, they didn't have proper, restroom accommodations and, water. And I mean, they just basically left those supporters high and dry. And I think it's a great reflection of the Trump campaign. You think he left his supporters high and dry? You wait, if he gets reelected, what he'll do to the American people. And how about when he's in Detroit? He's talking to, I think, the Economic Club in Detroit. And he's trashing Detroit at an interview in Detroit. Oh, if they, the rest of the country will be a pit just like Detroit. And I'm paraphrasing, but he's trash talking Detroit at a rally, wait for it, in Detroit. Like Obama says, you can't make this up, because all he does is complain about himself and the fact that he won the last election and that, they're going to cheat him out of this one. He already knows he's going to lose. So he is setting up all sorts of legal things all over the country. But the Democrats are backing that play because they're also sending out lawyers all over the country to try to handle this playbook that like I said, we have seen this before. People are voting in record numbers. I feel very good about that because a lot of those people are first time voters, young voters, and women voters. Now, let's face it. You think young people are coming out for Trump in mass? I don't think so. I look at Vice President Harris's rally and I see tons of young people. I just see enthusiasm. I see energy. I look at Trump rallies and, it's the same old, MAGA hats, same old white people. I think they just literally put a screen behind them with the same faces of the same people. So I know they don't do that, but it almost looks that way. Just as Vice President Harris says, go to a Trump rally or watch a Trump rally if you can stomach going all the way through it. It's a snooze fest. And the people voting in record numbers, especially women, you think women are coming out in record number to support Trump after overturning Dobbs and being, convicted of assault of Eugene Carroll and having to pay her over $80 million? And I think they won twice. I'm not sure if they won twice, but I think they refiled that suit again. Let's just say Vice President Harris wins the election. I think she's going to win. I've given many reasons why I think she's going to win. But the reason this podcast is entitled Age of Enlightenment, I think the people, truly the very best people, are going to make this country great after the election. And I've had the privilege of meeting some great people. I did a presentation with CNN and had a chance to actually talk with former President Clinton for several minutes, and just a remarkable man and extremely intelligent. I've had the privilege of being friends and knowing the former Deputy Homeland Security Secretary for the United States. I've met and had a brief conversation with the First Lady, Jill Biden. Other impressive Americans that I've had the opportunity to meet was Ambassador Rice, former Ambassador Rice, the late John Lewis, Senator Warnock. And what unites my memory of all of them is that they were extremely impressive people. They have impressive accomplishments, and they, to date, are just still remarkable people. And even the people that have passed, like the late John Lewis, his body of work stands. And there's still legislation that he tried to pass that I think is going to see the light of day and see passage in the future. They all show how unbelievably great this country can be, but it can only be great with great people. And I think when Vice President Harris becomes Madam President, people will come out of the woodwork. And I'll selfishly give an example for myself. If the future administration, Harris administration, calls on me and said, Robert, we want to tap you as the physical fitness, council president or whatever the nominee is. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger had it at one time with one of the administrations. I would jump at the chance to serve that administration. I can tell you, if Trump for some reason wins and they ask me for the same position, I would not serve. I will not dishonor myself to serve a dishonorable man in what I think would be a very dishonorable administration. But I think the Harris-Walz administration will bring out truly amazing people. I just think people that you haven't even heard of on the national scene for that long are gonna step forward and be put in remarkable positions and do incredible work. And the founders knew it. We, the people. It is gonna be the people that make this country move forward in an incredible way. And the only way you get the best people is through the best leadership. And I believe the current Vice President, Kamala Harris, is the best leadership. And I think the Harris-Walz administration will be a modern age of enlightenment. I hope you've enjoyed this 3-part series. And I hope you tune in for the next one. I pray for all the best for you and your family, and I pray for the best for this country. Thank you very much for the time.